Sid feels he has worked really hard and individuals will discuss Shadow and disregard Sid. A mystical entryway then, at that point, shows up close to him. He moves away, yet the entryway follows him. Acknowledging he will not have the option to get away from it, he chooses to enter. One more entryway showed up in the center of the field. Nelson contemplates whether the safe haven answered Shadow, and makes sense of that the entryway appears to the people who are qualified to go through it. The entryway begins opening and Nelson provides requests to eliminate the residents and that the preliminary is dropped. He then, at that point, attempts to make Alexia and the rest leave. However, Shadow Nursery seems drove by Alpha. She requests that Alexia and Rose do nothing until the entryway is shut and afterward enters the entryway. Epsilon had crushed Nelson's watchman and states he will be accompanying them inside the door. Nelson rejects and calls his gatekeeper Toxin to kill Epsilon. He endeavors to slice Epsilon yet she curves to avoid the cut, yet the slice winds up cutting her phony sludge bosoms. Not having any desire to be uncovered, Epsilon figures out how to reattach them and rapidly overcomes Toxin. She then, at that point, inquires as to whether he saw anything. However, Nelson states he saw nothing. Epsilon then snatches him and hops into the entryway. Other Shadow Nursery individuals accept Beta as prisoner and get in the entryway also. The entryway begins to close, yet Alexia and Rose hop in also. Alexia and Rose are shipped to where Alpha is. Alexia states she stumbled and fell into the entryway, however Alpha couldn't care less and tells her that it's fine assuming she likewise learns. Alpha makes sense of that this is where the legend Olivier cut the Diablo's left arm and they fixed it. They came to get more familiar with the clique, yet realize that Nelson won't talk. Alpha then, at that point, focuses at a sculpture of the legend Olivier, amazing the young ladies it's a mythical being lady. Alpha then, at that point, shows her face, which is equivalent to Olivier. Nelson then, at that point, acknowledges she was a had mythical person. However, as she wasn't viable, she ought to have been dead. Alpha states they know reality behind Olivier and the Had. They suspect that the clique objective isn't simply resuscitating the evil presence and states they ought to continue to see with their own eyes. Alpha then initiates the large entryway and opens it. Sid goes into a room where Aurora is and contemplates whether she called him. Aurora states she didn't, yet notes they had a good time battle. She considers how he arrived and Sid makes sense of an entryway appeared and didn't quit following him. He thinks about how they can leave, yet Aurora expresses her memory is deficient and has no recollections of truly leaving. Sid ponders their battle and Aurora makes sense of she just awakened there and that had never occurred. Sid then chooses to head back from where he came, yet Aurora stops him and asks him what she is wearing and in the event that he can help her. Sid takes note of its restraint. However, at that point surmises she didn't put it on for preparing, which is something he used to do quite a while in the past. Sid then, at that point, liberates her and Aurora states since they have similar objective of leaving this spot, they ought to cooperate. She makes sense of she knows how to free herself and that the safe haven is a memory jail, made from old fights. On the off chance that they go to its middle and annihilate its enchanted center, she will be free. She likewise noticed that they can't utilize wizardry and assuming they attempt, the enchanted will be consumed. Sid concurs and thinks about what she will do once she is free and Aurora states she will evaporate into nothing. Alpha and the Gathering investigate the office and Alpha makes sense of that this is the recollections of the legend Olivier. Sometime in the past the clique accumulated stranded kids and involved them for tests. The greater part of the youngsters wound up biting the dust, and a little gathering of young ladies made do. In the interim, Sid and Aurora see a memory of youthful Aurora who is crying. Aurora expresses that to push ahead, they need to end this memory. She slaps the youthful Aurora telling her that crying won't change anything, and soon the memory breaks. Alpha makes sense of that Olivier was one of the viable youngsters and they embedded Diablo's cells in her. Nelson states they didn't had a decision as they required ability to battle the evil spirit. Alpha returns making sense of that once Olivier developed, she was given a mission to remove new cells from Diablos. Olivier stayed faithful trusting that assuming she does her main goal it will prompt individuals living in harmony. Yet, regardless of the number of parts she that cut, the devil actually lived. The faction utilized strong relics to immobilize the left arm and acquire Diablo's cells. They had the option to make red pills, yet its incidental effects were too solid and not what the religion needed. They had the option to make pills that will give huge power and imperishable body. Alpha focuses to a man in the memory and to Nelson. Alexia and the rest understand it's a similar man. Nelson uncovers they call the medication dabs of Diablos. Alpha states it had 2 defects and one of them is the balding. Nelson then denies it, clearing up that he lost his hair due for stress as he was encircled by numbskulls who caused him to accomplish basically everything since he has interminable body. Alpha then, at that point, uncovers the primary defect is that they need to take the dabs 1 time per year or the impact will vanish. The subsequent defect is that they can create modest quantities and Nelson uncovers it's 12 every year. Alpha conjectures that is the reason the Knights of Rounds contain just 12 individuals. They have not consummated the dabs and accept the way into that is the Devil's ARM and the Legend's relatives with Olivier's blood. She asks Nelson, calling him the 11th of the rounds, assuming she is right. Nelson affirms and states he is Nelson the Eager. He buffs himself, however at that time, Delta wounds him from behind and tosses him down into the water. Nelson emerges from the water, breaking the memory and isolating them into gatherings. As he faces Alpha and Delta, he duplicates himself.